Hey guys, it's your favorite Dinobot here, and welcome to a new What If. This one might be shorter than the rest, but then again, I can always get creative with it for future seasons. But let's talk about it. What if Omega 9 was in Jurassic World? Let's talk about it. Now, this obviously is going to take place during Camp Cretaceous, which means the first few seasons do happen the same. However, we have to talk about a significant change in Season 3, and this would actually happen in the episode Clever, let's see, I don't think it's Clever Girl. Yep, it is actually Clever Girl, where Brooklyn and Sammy both go to discover a secret laboratory. However, just like when they discovered the door with E750, this is where they discover a room titled Project Omega 9. And this is where, when they enter the room, they find an egg. It's still incubating, still warm in everyone. However, it seems very close to hatching as well, but the chamber has it in sort of a stasis at the moment, so right now they don't know what to do. However, this is where they actually decide, or at least Sammy is the one to decide here, that they should take it back and, well, maybe just have a new dinosaur around. To which Brooklyn is like, we don't even know what kind of dinosaur this is. To which Sammy does state, yeah, but think of the possibilities. We could have another Bumpy around, and, well, maybe we wouldn't feel so lonely here. I mean, it would be another great addition to the Camp family. So this is where Sammy is the one to kind of override the two and does gently take the egg and, well, puts it in her bag carefully, allowing her to carry this egg off to safety. Meaning that when the group honestly does get back, they're pretty I guess you say pretty fine. I mean, the episode here does kind of just go pretty great in all honesty. However, when they get back to the camp and they discover that they have an egg, this is where Darius asks the question, do y'all know what kind of egg that is? To which they say, nope, not at all. Matter of fact, nobody knows. So unfortunately, they just took an entire egg and just didn't question what kind of dinosaur it was. They said it was another one of Dr. Wu's projects, so we thought maybe we could study it. Besides, who knows what's going to happen if they just left it there? It would have just gotten eaten. And we can't let just some, innocent baby dino just be, I guess you could say, brought into the world and just left there, right? So Darius kind of rolls his eyes and says, fine, but we all have to take turns taking care of it. To which, this is where, obviously, Kenji's like, come on, really? Do we have to? I mean, this thing is already probably the most dangerous thing on the island. Well, other than the Indominus Rex, which I think is dead if we remember correctly. So, okay, maybe it's not so bad after all. And this is where the egg does get taken care of by the group. We could say it's a couple hours that some of them do pass it around while the others kind of get stuff that they need for their camp. And this is where Brooklyn's like, oh shoot, guys, I need to tell y'all something. There's a new hybrid running around. We don't know what it is. It's called E750, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. It's some type of unstable hybrid that Dr. Wu created. And so while she's explaining this, Darius is the one holding the egg at the moment, and it begins to stir and hatch. And this actually takes the group's attention away for a moment, even taking Brooklyn's attention. And this is where the egg hatches into a baby Omega 9. It's adorable, it's cute, and this is where the group initially freaks out as it kind of just looks at Darius for a moment and just sits in his lap. All cute, cuddly, and adorable. It's so cute. This little baby mutated dinosaur. Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous that this thing is just sitting in his lap, all cute and cuddly. And this is where it begins to imprint on Darius. And so Darius actually does put the creature down for a bit, and he tries to move away, but it follows him. And it follows him happily. Think of this as a Godzilla the series type of imprintment, where it follows him, it just looks at him, and it begins to just run around and chases him playfully. And so after a while, everyone begins to pick up on this and just realize, like, holy crap, we got a baby T-Rex. To which Darius says, well, yes and no. It's definitely a member of the Tyrannosaurid family, but we don't know which one. And hopefully it's not the most dangerous one as well. To which this is where they say, so where did you guys find it? To which it says, in a laboratory. It was one of the few chambers that were, I guess you could say, where Toro was, but we kind of hid in that room because, you know, just in case he was there and just letting him pass. And so we found the egg, and then Sammy was the one who kind of just took it upon herself to just, you know, grab it and run with it. To which this is where Sammy says, in her defense, she could not let that baby dinosaur die. To which everyone does laugh for a moment, but they realize the gravity of this situation. A new hybrid is running around, and they have a new friend, believe it or not. Now again, considering the whole Jurassic World thing where babies do tend to grow a little bit faster because of their hormones, this is where Darius decides that maybe it is best if they do take their little friend to the laboratory, and he decides to do it himself. Meanwhile, the Scorpius Rex does kill the Ceratosaurus just like in the original, meaning that now that it's out and about, it's going on the killing spree. However, I'm going to do something very different. It doesn't just leave the Ceratosaurus there after just dragging it. It eats it, showing that it has such a ravenous appetite. This is something like which one? It's like this endless appetite. It needs to feed no matter what. It's like Devil Joe. That's what I'm trying to say here. It's like a Devil Joe. It eats its prey after killing it, and it's just consuming so much. And this causes a mass disruption around the island. Herbivores becoming more aggressive, even with the poisonous quills and stuff like that. And the group, or at least the rest of them, do encounter Blue, just like they do in the original, by going into her pen with Bumpy. Meanwhile, Darius is investigating the laboratory that Omega 9 was found. And this is where he finally manages, after slipping past Toro and luring him towards the Sinoceratops, this is where he ultimately makes his way into the room, or at least into his room, or at least, into Omega's room, and begins to use the computer, using whatever little power the facility has left. He does have to kick away some compies, but this is where Omega actually jumps out, and it actually chomps on one of the compies and begins eating it. To which Darius is like, oh, you were, hungry, huh? To which, after eating it, it kind of just sits there obediently. And this is where, when Darius does type, he does click on the file titled Project Omega 9. And this is where we find out that Omega 9 is the DNA of a Daspletosaurus. Now you might say, oh, why did you change it from a regular Tyrannosaurus? And let's be kind of real here. I'm not saying Tyrannosaurus is overrated. Don't get me wrong. It's very popular. It's pretty cool. But let's be real. We got to give some other dinosaur, other Tyrannosaurus variants their time in the sun, right? So, believe it or not, we do have Omega 9 being able to, well, Omega 9 is basically an enhanced variant of a Daspletosaurus. And this is where it also shows they were experimenting with something different. Something called Element. But they were experimenting it on a very different level. This rare mineral on their planet, or at least they hope that it's from their planet, and they begin to study it. They were working on it, and they were experimenting on it with this new egg, and kind of just choosing him out of the bunch. So this is where Darius simply points out that he was the lucky one. However, as Darius begins to kind of examine and open up the files, this is where he finds out that Omega was meant to be a weapon, meant to only hatch when one person was around. And the fact that if it imprints on them, it imprints on them for good, meaning that it'll only obey that specific person, and it'll obey them loyally, almost like a dog, if you will. So this is where Darius kind of looks at Omega, who's kind of sitting there, and then another compy runs around, so he kind of just pounces on it immediately and simply states that you will be well taken care of by me, okay? And so while it is finishing off the other copy, it can't help but just nuzzle Darius, kind of just understanding him in a way, if you get what I mean. It understands him very well. And this is where Darius gets contacted from Ben about the Scorpius Rex and how it's just causing a rampage at the moment. And this is where we see the Scorpius Rex going on a rampage. However, Darius does make it back just in time to help the group, prepare their defenses. So they do get the electrical fences up and everything, but the Scorpius does manage to kind of sneak around it. And well, this is where we actually see how the Scorpius Rex, how they see how the Scorpius Rex looks. It looks monstrous. It looks very much dangerous. And with it being hungry, just endlessly hungry, it almost eats one of the campers. However, this is where baby Omega actually jumps out at the Scorpius and clamps down on its nostrils, causing it an immense amount of pain. To which, this is where they're looking at Darius like, dude, what is that thing? To which this is where Darius explains it's a baby Daspletosaurus, and it thinks I'm its parent now, and it's not gonna go anywhere anytime soon. To which this is where Ben says, wow, so you got your own dino companion too. I just hope it doesn't eat Bumpy anytime soon, because that would be really horrendous. To which he says, look, I don't know the full extent of its loyalty or of its capabilities. It was experimented on with something called Element, and right now it's defending us with everything it has. So the Scorpius Rex ultimately does throw off Omega, and well, this is where it begins to hear other dinosaurs and its stomach grumbling. Considering it still has that whole ADHD thing because of its whole deformity, it's still gonna do the same thing like it did, abandoning the campers and baby Omega, who Darius goes to check on and says that he's proud of him for what he did. Now, with the Scorpius Rex running around, this means the group does have to take a bit more initiative. However, this is where Darius does note something. Baby Omega is growing, and growing fast. Now at the same size as a Alioramus. And well, while Darius is not afraid of it, the others are, as they know this thing is still it's still a carnivore. At the end of the day, I don't care how you pretty much splice it, this thing is a carnivore. And to where it shows that it's not really threatening, not even to Bumpy. But again, we're still talking about a juvenile Daspletosaurus that is now around the same size of an Alioramus, and it's a mutated variant. So, yeah, it's pretty big. It's big enough to where it can now cause some actual trouble. And this is where everything with the Scorpius Rex still happens, where it's plummeting the island into chaos. But now we have another issue. With him disturbing the balance of the island and other animals sensing this is where Rexy is now venturing further outside of her territory, meaning she's also looking for the Scorpius Rex. And this is also where Omega, is venturing out on his own a lot more. Understanding that he is going to keep a close eye on his parents, he just wants to, he's a curious dinosaur. While he's still a juvenile, he's still a decent size to tackle his own prey and everything. He just makes sure that it's not Bumpy anytime soon as he's obeying, his parental figures. So they're all just doing their own thing, preparing to possibly leave with the Scorpius Rex. And by the way, this means that Sammy never gets infected, so Yaz never has to break her leg and try to save her. So in all honesty, yeah, that whole kind of thing never happens where they're not friends. In all honesty, that was kind of dumb where Yaz was just gonna push her away. Let's just be real, it just never made any sense whatsoever. Let's just be honest. And so this means that Omega bumps into Rexy. And, well, this is kind of an awkward moment, because Rexy looks at him and is like, so you smell like me, but you're not me. You know what? I'm just going to go the other way. And so Rexy kind of just looks at him, sniffs him for a bit, and kind of goes her own way, while Omega's kind of keen and interested now. that he's found another Rex, if you will, or at least another member of a similar species. And he does manage to, he does follow Rexy, and Rexy does snap at him a little bit, telling him to, back off. And he does give her like a few feet of space before trailing along. Rexy, seeing this, kind of just rolls her eyes and just keeps on going. And so Omega now does follow Rexy. He doesn't imprint on her. He's just interested in another member of a similar species or another member in a similar family tree. And so he actually watches Rexy hunt an Apatosaurus. However, little does he know that the Scorpius Rex is also hunting down this same Apatosaurus. Meaning that when he's watching, he then notices the Scorpius Rex. And well, Rexy lunges at the Apatosaur and manages to get it. However, this is where when the Scorpius Rex lunges, Omega pounces on it and tackles it to the ground and, well, begins fighting it. The Scorpion is using its claws and tries to envenomate it with its tail quills, but the quills don't even go in. They shatter on impact in coming into contact with Omega's skin, and this is where Omega rams the Scorpius into the side of a tree and begins to utilize its jaws a lot more properly, now understanding it after seeing Rexy do it only once. And Rexy, believe it or not, who's already killed the Apatosaurus, is actually quite interested in this. And this is where Omega begins to basically clamp its jaws on tighter, now with himself being like fully adjusted to it. And this is where a whole snap is heard, the meaning that he broke the Scorpius Rex's neck. So it's dead. Or is it? So, believe it or not, this is where Rexy actually is a little bit interested now that the little Tyrannosaurid, or at least the little dinosaur, at least the little hybrid, if you will, had just torn and just killed this hybrid, the thing that was causing so much trouble to the island. And so when Rexy begins to eat, she notices Omega coming over to her, slowly, but, not very, I guess you could say right then and there. And so as Rexy is eating, she decides to move. She throws a chunk of meat at him and then invites him to actually join her. So now Omega has found himself a new friend in Rexy at the moment, meaning that Rexy is just no longer alone anymore, and Omega now has someone else. However, something catches Omega's attention, at least when he's, kind of had his feeling done eating, and this is where he actually hears another Scorpius Rex and the campers screaming. This would be nighttime at this moment, by the way. So this means that Omega has to rush into the woods to go and help them. And he makes it just in the nick of time to where he's able to jump up and pounce on the back of the Scorpius Rex, utilizing his claws in a very non-traditional way, not like a raptor or anything, but kind of using like a dragon from Game of Thrones would, latching on to its prey and biting down on its neck by using those tiny cute little arms to kind of hold down on the Scorpius's back the best it can. The Scorpius thrashes and everything, throwing its weight around in the building, causing everything to collapse. However, at the last minute, this is where Blue jumps in after being, convinced by Darius, and they both begin to work together in order to take down the Scorpius Rex, meaning that this ends the reign of this hybrid far earlier than expected. And this is where Darius is pretty happy. However, this is where Omega hears Rexy roaring, and he simply looks at his parent and then darts off into the woods. To which Darius says, wait, but Brooklyn tells him no. He's found something. Or found someone. He'll be back, Darius. He'll be back. And hopefully we'll see him again very soon. Now, this does mean that they eventually do have to find a way to leave the island. And in those days that Omega has spent with Rexy, he's grown up. Now a fully grown Omega 9. From time to time, he brings her kills as Rexy does prepare, her nest and everything. And this is where something does change in the timeline. Rexy actually has a clutch of eggs. Now you might say, wait, did Rexy and Omega, you know, yes, they did. Omega isn't exactly a traditional dinosaur. And again, Rexy isn't his mother. Plus, with dinosaurs, age is like really, really weird. Like, you have older males mating with younger females. You guys know how the dinosaur documentaries do it. It's everybody can get some at the end of the day. I'm just saying, unless they're, babies and all that, but dinosaurs ain't never been to no Diddy parties and everything. So, yeah. So, with that being said, Rexy does have a new clutch of eggs, meaning that they are expecting their own, little family at the moment. However, just like in the original, this is where Dr. Wu and the mercenaries actually do return. Sensing a whole, I guess you could say, territorial dispute situation, or the fact that humans are back on the island, this is where Omega takes it upon himself to investigate. And well, Dr. Wu's own team is actually torn apart, especially when he sees that Darius is being apprehended by one of them. And he almost gets Dr. Wu until Darius steps in front of him telling him, no, not him. He has Brooklyn, okay? Not him. And this is where Omega stops for a moment, and Dr. Wu can see it. He's bonded with the child. But right now, Dr. Wu just takes the opportunity to just get the heck out of there. And this is where Omega does nuzzle Darius and goes his separate ways. But this isn't where everything is left off. You see, during the events leading up to this here, Omega is still captured by, I guess you could say, Biosyn in their company. Or, actually, no, it was Biosyn. So he's actually captured by using highly advanced tranquilizer rounds. And believe it or not, he's not captured by Biosyn, he's captured by Manticore. And this is where he is transported to the other island. And unfortunately, this means that Rexy is now raising her 3 children on her own. And that's where I'm going to leave it off here, you guys. What will happen to Rexy and these 3 kids? How about you guys actually name the children in the comment section down below? Where is Omega going? And will he meet Darius again on Manticore Island? But hey, that's going to be all today, you guys. Please comment down below. Like and subscribe and share with your friends. This is Legendary Grimlock, and I hope you guys have a blessed day.